On this episode of ResiWeek, Vin Bruno is out at Cydia. There's a worldwide ransomware attack that can affect your clients, and voice-enabled devices should increase 130% this year. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Peerless AV, the official outdoor display provider of the Daytona International Speedway, and by Extron Electronics.
This is ResiWeek, episode 67, Pain Points.
This is ResiWeek.
Welcome to ResiWeek. This is your weekly wrap-up of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv, and today I'm pleased to be joined by Joe Whitaker. He is the president of The Thoughtful Home. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Nice hot weather here, so I'm glad to be inside the air conditioning with you guys.
Excellent. Then we have Jason Griffin. He actually just changed positions. He's the partner development manager for One Vision Resources and the co-host of the Home Tech podcast. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thanks so much for having me.
See, I warned you ahead of time that title was a mouthful.
It's a mouthful.
It was.
You got
it. I did. Not bad. Last and certainly not least, we have John Clancy. He is the VP of Residential for Crestron. How are you, sir?
Hey, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing great. All right, guys, let's kick this right off with some breaking news. Cue the CNN music. That was nice, right? It was like you were watching broadcast. This comes to us from CE Pro, and as I said, it is a breaking news as of about 30 minutes ago. It seems that Vin Bruno has resigned as Cydia president and CEO effective immediately. He's looking to focus on new opportunities in the residential and commercial technology industries. Now, the fun part of this is Vin has been with Cydia for about 2 years now and has kind of overseen a lot of changes for that industry. Jason, what does this mean? I don't know if any of us really saw this coming per se, but what does this mean for the Cydia industry as a whole?
Yeah, it's really tough to say. Like you said, this is very much breaking news. In fact, we were just sort of talking about it breaking right as we were getting ready to record here today. So really, this is fresh, came as a big surprise to me. I think Bruno did a lot of great things at the organization. I've had a chance to meet Bruno a couple of times, always talk to him. He's got a really strong reputation amongst the Cydia base for being a very responsive guy. I know that a lot of the people I talk to are just consistently amazed at how quickly he gets back to people and seems to address concerns. And so really hard to say. I don't want to speculate. Clearly something that we as an industry will be digging into and trying to figure out what the story is here over the coming days. And I'll be curious to find out more. But I commend Vin for the job that he did while he was there at the organization.
Very good. Now, John and Joe, I know you guys are both Cydia board members. So if there's anything you can or want to say, feel free. If not, we can move on.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in. We were told about it about an hour ago, 45 minutes ago, and so I'm not sure of the details. But all I can say is that Vin did a great job with the global integration plan by bringing Cydia EMEA and Cydia together. And then in the sale of the show to Emerald. So I mean, he's done a fantastic job. So I'm really not sure what else we can say.
Very good. Joe, do you have anything to add or?
I love Vin to death. And like John said, we just found out an hour ago. And, he is one of those guys that he's got skills and he's looking to look at some other things. And I could say, thank you to Vin for all he's done. I mean, he accomplished a massive amount of things in a short period of time, just like Clancy said, global integration, sale of the show, getting Cydia training back on the road. That was a big one for me. That's something that's been shut down for years, pulling all those things off. And, personal thing for me to Vin was interesting that there was a big story that came out on CE Pro. It just did really well. What a big story. about me taking the Echo dots and putting them all over the place and, drumming up business by using dots as a business card. CD Pro would have never found out about that had it not been for Vin, because me and Vin were talking about it when we were in Indy not too long ago. So I mean, the guy has got skills. I am, I'm like extremely happy with everything he's done. Obviously, wish him the best, and I know I'm going to be seeing him around, so I can't say that I miss him. But I'm going to miss him because
Very good. All right, gentlemen, let's move on to some other stuff that has been going on recently this past week. If you were unaware of this, wow. But there was a massive worldwide ransomware hack that has hit a large portion of the UK, large portion of Russia, and most recently, as of today, is moving on to China. This comes to us from CNET. And as we mentioned, this was a ransomware attack where, if you don't know what ransomware is, they take over your machine and encrypt all of your personal files, and then you need to pay them to get them unlocked. Now, gentlemen, this isn't necessarily anything new, but I would argue that the speed in which this ransomware duplicated itself has not necessarily been seen recently. John, as residential dealers who obviously are dealing with the network and getting devices on and working with their clients' network, occasionally being the only person outside of maybe the telco people that are touching their clients' networks, what do dealers need to do to kind of help protect not only their systems that are going in, but their clients just in general? Is there anything they can do?
Yeah, look, I mean, security, we haven't really seen a publicized hack of a famous person yet, or of their home where someone has breached or turned off the security system or done things maliciously yet, right? But I think that that is an inevitable instance that's going to occur at some point in time. And maybe then the awareness will be raised in the CEDIA world about security, network security. I mean, we, at least at Crestron, do everything we can. I mean, our products, the same products that are sold in the home, are used at government facilities like the NSA and military installations. So the capabilities are there. It's whether or not they're turned on and implemented, and not just punching big holes through a firewall just because it's convenient and easy. And teaching best practices about that are really our responsibility as manufacturers, as CEDIA board members. I just think that is the next big thing to happen, and shame on us if it does, because we've been trying to get the word out there, and I think that like I said, it's still, the onus is on the integrator to turn these features on and to adhere to these best practices.
Jason, beyond obviously speccing proper equipment and things that focus on security, what else can dealers do, and what should be in their kind of 1, 2, 3 guide for applying that for their clients?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think John hit on most of the things that dealers can really do as far as client facing, and so it's a little bit limited, but the good news is that it doesn't take much to protect your clients. Don't port forward. Don't allow them to use default passwords. These are very simple things to do that just have to go on a checklist somewhere that you're going to look at when you're deploying the project. I think the unfortunate thing about all of this network security in terms of how it impacts residential integrators is that, quite frankly, there's a lot of potential downside here. And I think that integrators should really be looking at getting some verbiage included in their contracts, if they don't already, about what happens if the data is breached on a network they're managing. That's not to recuse themselves at all from the responsibility of doing their due diligence, but you never know. And so just protecting yourselves, I think on the flip side of that coin, there is some upside. It does give residential integrators an opportunity to open a dialogue with their clients, to get positioned as an advocate, to really build that relationship beyond just being an installer, but being a technology manager, right? Of really helping your clients understand that technology is a core part of your life, and that the relationship between an integrator and a homeowner only begins at the installation, and then it goes on forever after that. And so I think this is a good opportunity to position as advocates for our clients. I don't see a lot of business upside to trying to make that a core part of your value proposition, for instance, but it's definitely something that we need to be accounting for.
Joe, just to expand on something Jason was talking about, how important do dealers need to really look at their documentation and saying that, even if you enable all of our, recommended security practices, there still is the possibility of this? Because so many people, we see it all the time, even with something as simple as a Mac, where our clients will say, oh no, I have a Mac. I don't need any virus protection software. I don't need anything because I have a Mac. Right. Like that's been around, that type of, attitude has been around for so long. How important is it that you really tighten up your contracts and anytime you're touching anything on any client's network, you have something that they can sign off on stating that they've, either gone with your security recommendations or they're bypassing some of them, and where that protects you as your company?
Oh, you know me and my waivers. But we're getting to the point where paperwork isn't good enough anymore. We're really getting that point. A good example I just recently gave to someone is, I'm not going to name any product names. We'll just say a Wi-Fi enabled light bulb. I happen to know how to remotely default it back to its factory settings, which means it broadcasts its own SSID that you can log into, and I know how to get into it and get the Wi-Fi address and then the WPA key for the network it's previously attached to. So there's some stuff out there now. There's some things, tricky things that people can do. But like this one was big because it was a web intrusion, right? So it is something that actually comes from the internet through your ISP into whatever you have. So there's certain things you can and can't do in a situation like that, which is why before we started, I told you this kind of interests me. And the reason why is in our industry, every integrator, manufacturer, everybody should be acutely aware of this. This should be a pain point that this is going on. There's a huge potential for this to happen on a much more mass scale than this. And the reason why this interests me is myself and a guy named Vinny Triola from Night Lion Security. He's a certified ethical hacker, hacking, certified for forensics for hacking. By CEDIA, it'll probably be before, we're introducing a service for integrators with RMR built in to actually track all cyber intrusions, shut down ports, do a bunch of stuff that needs to happen in the residential network, because this is a big, big deal now. And, I can't say who, but it's already been tested and verified by one of the leading manufacturers in our channel for networking equipment, and it's already going to be available through a company that most HTSA members can get stuff from. So I just left a whole bunch of pieces out there for you. So, no, but I mean, seriously,
it's a puzzle. You can decode it.
Like Clancy said, this is something that it's one of those lead by example situations. There's, John preaches it to his guys, the Crestron dealers, and there's only so much Crestron can do because they're not really in network hardware or cybersecurity. But like John said, if we're the people that, CEDIA members kind of voted in, it's kind of our job to lead by example sometimes. And if there's something that needs to be done, well, damn it, if somebody better figure out how to do it. So, that's one of those things I believe that within the next couple of years, this is going to be one of the hottest topics in our industry and one of the biggest things that we are going to face, because we have never been prepared to deal with this. And now hackers are actually really focusing on that market instead of enterprise, because enterprise, guess what? They already have these things in place. Mm-hmm. They have cybersecurity. They have pen testing. They have all of this stuff that doesn't happen in residential.
And
so
yet,
smart.
And yet, even with all of that stuff, someone like NHS got hacked and got infected.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's always the thing that most, when you're talking to your clients, they always come back with that whole, who's going to hack my computer? I don't have, I've got pictures of my grandkids. I don't have anything on my computer. And it's not just about that, it's about the personal information and everything else. But there will come a day when that is the low-hanging fruit that everyone's going after.
When I hear that, I always say, so you're telling me you've never put your social security number on a credit card form that you were doing on your computer? That's
you never did
ransomware.
your taxes?
I want your social security number, your address, your phone number, your birth date. And guess what? I am you.
Well, no, you're not me. You're still a little, but
I'm a little shorter.
just
Not
a touch.
pretty, but okay.
Like, I just
Well, guys, and even if you take all that off the table and you talked about pictures of your grandkids and stuff, I mean, that's one of the scary things about ransomware is that's exactly what they're coming after. Is how important are those pictures to you? Because if somebody locks up your whole computer and tells you got to pay $1,000 to get those back and you don't have them backed up anywhere else, well, guess what? You're probably going to pay them $1,000. And that's the whole point of ransomware. Now we're seeing this on a very massive scale right now. And the targets are healthcare facilities where the data is a whole different ball of wax. But the point is ransomware attacks can happen in the home. And I do agree that residential integrators need to get in position to provide solutions for that. I think that we're just exposed to so much potential downside if we don't get out in front of this, that it's frightening.
Very good. All right, gentlemen, let's move on to a story from strategy.com and our good friend Ted Green. It seems voice-enabled devices will grow by 130%, give or take, this year. Now, this comes to us from the market research firm eMarketer. And, obviously the title pretty much says it all, that they will expect to see 130% growth in voice-related technology and devices specifically. Now, if you scroll down, one of the interesting things that Tim is showing us on our screen right now is that Amazon Echo is currently owning that market with over 70% of market share. But as Google continues to push, and Microsoft is now getting into this as well as every other manufacturer is pushing something voice control-ish as we go. Jason, where do we see this in terms of the residential market? Do we expect to see that kind of increase?
Yeah, I mean, I think the numbers were surprising to me when I read the study. I went and looked up eMarketer, and they seem like a very legitimate company. They've been around since '96, quite a big base of subscribers and pro members as well. So very legitimate. Study seems like the real deal. I think that, the scale, the speed at which it's increasing in the home is exponential. And that, I think, is the most surprising thing. The fact that it's catching on, I don't think is surprising at all. I for a long time, was a naysayer on voice control. And I think what really turned the corner for me was the form factor of a device like an Echo, and the fact that you don't have to rely on a touch screen. And that convenience, I think, was what it finally took to push this stuff around the corner. And so I think we've really got a new category here on our hands that's going to be around for the long haul. I do think it's interesting when you read these articles, they don't necessarily delineate between a voice-activated assistant that you have to use your phone for, like Siri currently, versus something like an Echo. And I think that's an important distinction that was missing here. Of course, there are rumors circulating that Apple will finally come to the market with their Echo competitor here at WWDC in June. And so we'll be anxiously awaiting that on our Home Tech podcast. We've been calling that Siri in a can for quite a while, and we've been really predicting it for a while. And I got to imagine Apple's going to make a move in this space, and Amazon clearly has a head start on everybody. They're way out in front, but time will tell if they're able to maintain that as this category really matures and rounds out.
Very good. Joe, one of the interesting things that this study also showed was the adoption by essentially generational user groups over 2016, 2017, and what they're forecasting obviously for the rest of 17 as well as 18 and 19. And obviously the millennial age group is adopting quickly and effectively. But we're not seeing a lot of movement, or at least they're not forecasting a lot of movement with Gen X and baby boomers. Is that just from their occasional aversion to technology, or is something else at play?
So,
and I didn't come to you just because you're really close to one of those groups.
Okay. So before I answer your question, I'm gonna ask all of you guys 2 questions real quick. So how many of you guys unplug your Echo when you do podcasts like this now?
Mine's way upstairs, so it doesn't.
I always have to plug mine. The other thing is, has anybody messed with calling anybody on their dot this last weekend?
On calling anyone?
Calling someone.
Yeah,
Oh.
they got a new feature. Yeah.
Yeah, the new features.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm going to jump in. I'm leading
It's-
into your
It's
question.
still
Matt.
not supported in Canada, so most of the
Oh,
features
that's
don't
right.
work
Okay.
here yet.
So that's what I'm leading into your question.
Wah,
So
wah.
I think that's a slightly slanted statistic, and I think it may have more to do with education because most of our in those 2 generational classifications, our clients in those 2 probably have more dots and echoes than anyone else. Just as far as being able to integrate with their system. So on the consumer side, I can say that, that little statistic may make sense. On the custom side, I don't, because it's much easier to use. I mean, if you've got massive arthritis, can't use touchscreen or remote, boom, here you go, here's a solution. So I think that's a slightly slanted statistic. Really, I do. But, the thing about, that the big portion that Amazon owns, it's because they're so far ahead and because while others like Google and then when Apple, I like Apple in a can, by the way, whenever they come with that, Amazon's already far enough ahead. Apple's still trying to work on their can. Amazon is calling from your dot and from your phone to a dot and a touch screen that has video conferencing. And Apple's still trying to come up with the damn can. That's why Amazon is able to actually keep this bus moving. It's because while other people are trying to jump on the bus, they've already hopped out into a Lambo. They're sailing up in the sunset already. So, I mean, and that's what's going to cause that little statistic to shift. Because grandma can now sit in her recliner and say, call Joey, and boom, she's talking to me over the dot. So there's a big shift coming.
Now, part of what I find interesting in that thought process, Joe, is that my parents, they don't have a dot, they don't have an Echo, they don't have anything, but they do both have iPhones. And for reasons that I still cannot understand, they use Siri to dictate every single text they send. Even if it's just a single, okay, they'll literally push the button, wait, and go through it. So, John, given kind of what Joe was pushing towards and knowing that some of the, I hate to say older generation because I don't feel that it's that old, but those 2 other generations, are they the biggest opportunity for voice control for integrators, knowing how much they love that option? They just may not be aware that it's available to them.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's funny, like you said, you have these 2 extremes. The young, really young kids who, my kids, for instance, my son is 10, and he'll use his Amazon Echo every single evening to figure out, what he's doing tomorrow, what weather-based, and what his favorite teams are up to right now. And then you have the older generation who, on a small device, have a hard time seeing the display and typing, and then use this, the voice-added feature for dictation purposes. And then you have that chunk in the middle, right, who are still somewhat reluctant to go out and just, start implementing voice. And honestly, from our perspective, even when I integrate, Alexa into my home, I don't use it a lot, and it's not going to replace a touchscreen or a remote or a mobile device, but it does offer great convenience when I'm leaving the house in the morning and my arms are full, and I can say, Alexa, goodbye, and my house goes to sleep. The same thing when I return home. My arms are full of stuff, and yes, I could try and hit a button with my elbow and get the lights on, but to walk in the door and say, Alexa, I'm home, and have the lights turn on and all kinds of other automated features kick in, there's definitely value there, and I think that the realization of that for this, those 2 tiers in the middle there, still is yet to happen.
Very good. All right, gentlemen, that's all the time we have for this episode. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Ooh. Oh, Joe's sending me messages and I'm not reading them fast enough. Thanks again for joining us. Jason, where can people connect with you?
On Twitter at Home Tech Podcast is a great way if you're interested in learning about that, or just search Jason Griffing on LinkedIn and would be happy to connect there as well. Thank you guys for having me.
Excellent. Yeah, definitely check out Jason's podcast if you haven't. It's fantastic. It's one of the few I actually will listen to. You're welcome. You're welcome. Joe, my good friend, where can people connect with you?
As always, you can find us on Facebook at The Thoughtful Home and on Twitter at Thoughtful Home. And next week, you can also find us on Alexa with the new Thoughtful Home app and the Thoughtful Home Flash update. So you'll be getting news from me right there on the dot.
Are you saying that you're going to be like speaking to me from my dot?
Yes, indeed.
I'm going to have to turn that one off. John, thanks again for joining us. Where can people connect with you?
LinkedIn is good. John Clancy, Crestron at LinkedIn, or jclancy at crestron.com via email.
Excellent. Again, thank you so much for joining us. For myself, if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at Matt D. Scott on Twitter and everywhere else. But more importantly, please take a moment to stop by avnation.tv. You'll find this show as well as a vast variety of all of our other shows with all the verticals we cover. When you stop by the site, please take a moment to check out our underwriters. We're extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks for watching, and that's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek.